Ever feel like you're standing at the edge of a vast unknown? Kind of like staring into a dungeon for the first time as a dungeon master.
Oh, yeah. I know that feeling.
Yeah, right. So today we're diving deep into...
Into the dungeon.
Into the dungeon. Well, we're diving deep into an article from LitRPG Reads called Everything a New Dungeon Master Needs to Know, Running a Smooth and Fun D&D Campaign. It's got some really great tips for new dungeon masters. And
I could have used this when I started out.
me too. So the article really stresses some key responsibilities that go beyond just knowing all the rules.
Right.
It says that dungeon masters should really think of themselves as a world builder, a storyteller, and a referee all at the same time.
It's a tough job, but somebody's got to do it.
Exactly. So one of the first things that a new dungeon master needs to do is to really paint a vivid picture of the world that their players are going to be playing in. So how would you go about doing that?
So you really want to get detailed and creative. You know, get those players' imaginations going. Don't just say the tavern is crowded. Say something like, the air is thick with the scent of ale and roasted meat as boisterous laughter and the clinking of tankards fill the dimly lit tavern.
Oh, that's much better.
Yeah.
Yeah, like set the scene
That's the scene.
with sounds and smells.
Exactly.
The article also suggests that dungeon masters can make the world feel even more alive by focusing on the characters that are inhabiting it.
Right.
The NPCs are non-player characters that the players will interact with during the game.
Oh, yeah. Those NPCs are so important. They really bring depth to your game.
Yeah, for sure.
You don't want to get too bogged down in backstories for every single one, though.
Oh gosh, yeah, that would
Yeah, it's a lot.
be a lot of work.
Just focus on a few key characteristics for each NPC. And I think that's really what makes them memorable. Like, give that grumpy blacksmith a catchphrase, you know, back in my day.
Right.
Or the gossipy barkeep could say, well, butter my biscuits, you know?
I love that.
Whenever they reveal some juicy piece of gossip, little things like that will really bring your NPCs to life.
Yeah, those are great examples. So now we've talked about world building and characters, but a new dungeon master also has to wrangle the game mechanics.
Oh, absolutely. That's a big part of it.
So how do they make sure they're not overwhelmed by all that?
Read the adventure ahead of time.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
You don't want to be caught off guard by a complex rule or a challenging encounter in the middle of the game.
Nobody wants to be flipping through the rule book in the middle of the game.
Nobody. So just skim for those tricky spots, you know? Think about what your players are good at and where they might struggle. And if you've got a party full of spellcasters, maybe add in a few more melee enemies just to make things a little more challenging.
Ooh, that's a good point.
Keep them on their toes.
Yeah, so be prepared, be prepared.
Exactly.
The article also talks about the importance of setting clear expectations for the game.
Oh, for sure.
So what are your thoughts on that?
It is so important for a smooth gaming experience. Like before that first session, sit down with your players. Talk about the tone and style of the campaign, you know. Are you going for like a serious, epic fantasy or something lighter?
Right.
Maybe a romp full of slapstick humor. Get everyone on the same page. Avoid those misunderstandings and you'll have a much better time.
Right, so make sure everybody is aligned on what the tone of the game's going to be.
Exactly.
So I think one of the biggest fears that faces a new dungeon master is
What's that?
the rules.
Oh, the rules.
Not knowing every single rule perfectly.
Oh, yeah. I remember being terrified of messing up the rules.
So what does the article say about that?
You don't have to know every single rule. Strict adherence isn't always necessary, and in fact, sometimes a well-placed judgment call can make the game even better.
Okay, so how does that work?
Well, imagine your players are trying to escape this collapsing dungeon, and they think of this really clever solution that's not in the rulebook.
Wow.
Instead of saying, nope, not in the rules, you can just use your best judgment and say, sure, why not? If it makes sense for the story.
Right, so you're rewarding their ingenuity and you're keeping the game moving.
Exactly. Prioritizing the flow and the fun can be more important than following every single rule.
Okay.
Be fair and consistent, but as you gain experience, you'll start to get a feel for when you can bend the rules a little.
Okay, cool. So we've talked about world building characters, the rules. Now let's talk about keeping those players engaged.
Ah, yes. That's crucial. The article has some great advice on that.
What are some of the tactics that stood out to you?
Spotlight moments. Make sure each player feels like they have a meaningful role to play. You don't want one player dominating the action while others are just sitting there bored.
Right.
Give everyone a chance to shine, whether it's through combat or problem solving or role playing.
Yeah, everybody gets their moment.
Everyone gets their moment.
What other tips does the article offer for keeping those engagement levels high?
Cliffhangers. End the session with a cliffhanger that will have them on the edge of their seats until the next game.
I love it.
Maybe they uncover a cryptic message or a beloved NPC gets kidnapped.
Right.
Leave them wanting more.
Classic storytelling technique.
It works every time. And don't forget about making sure their choices actually have an impact on the game world.
Oh yeah, that's huge.
When players feel like their choices actually matter, they'll be way more invested in the story. If they're just going through the motions, they're gonna get bored.
Right, it's got to feel like their actions have consequences.
Exactly. If their decisions can shape the course of events, it raises the stakes and makes things way more exciting.
Yeah, like they're not just playing a game, they're participating in this living, breathing world.
And that's where player creativity comes in. Embrace those unexpected twists and turns that players bring to the table. Some of the most memorable D&D moments come from those unexpected player contributions.
I love that.
Oh.
So how do you balance those unexpected player contributions with your own plans for the story?
It's like you're all co-authors, building on each other's ideas. You're the guide shaping those player-generated ideas into something really special. If a player comes up with a wild idea, don't shut them down.
Yeah.
Roll with it. You might be surprised at where it leads.
So it's a little bit like improv.
Yeah, exactly. You're constantly reacting and adapting to what your fellow players are throwing at you.
It keeps things fresh.
It does. Every session is a unique and unpredictable experience. You might even discover that those player-driven tangents lead to even better stories than you had planned.
I love that. It's all about collaboration.
Collaboration.
Okay, so there's one aspect of dungeon mastering that can be tricky for new folks. NPCs. It's easy to get overwhelmed trying to create these elaborate backstories for every character that the players might meet.
Oh, I've been there. It's so easy to get bogged down in the details. But the article has a great solution. Focus on just a few key characteristics for each NPC instead of writing a whole novel about their life.
Right. Keep it simple.
Keep it simple, but memorable. Maybe the shopkeeper has a nervous habit of adjusting their glasses, or they always end their sentences with a rhyme. Or maybe they have a giant purple birthmark shaped like a dragon.
All of it.
Little things like that make them stand out. And remember, NPCs should serve a purpose in this story. They're not just there to fill up space. They can be allies, quest givers, villains, or just colorful characters who add flavor to the world. As long as they have a reason for existing, they can enrich the game.
So let's shift gears a little bit and talk about feedback.
Oh, feedback is so important. It's how you grow as a dungeon master.
Absolutely. So what does the article recommend for creating a feedback-friendly environment at the table?
Open communication. Make sure your players feel comfortable sharing their thoughts, both good and bad.
So create a safe space for honest feedback.
Exactly. You can chat after each session, send out anonymous surveys, or even have dedicated feedback sessions where you just talk about what's working and what's not.
I like that. And remember that receiving feedback, even if it's critical, is not a personal attack.
Oh no, it's a gift.
It is a gift. It means that your players care about the game and they want to help you improve.
And who doesn't want to level up their DM skills?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we've covered a lot of ground today. We've talked about world-building characters, rules, engagement, feedback. But I think there's still so much more to explore in this amazing world of dungeon mastering.
Oh, there is.
What do you say? We'll take a quick break and come back to talk about what it means to really embrace your inner dungeon master.
I am so ready. Let's do it.
I will be right back.
So we're back and ready to explore this idea of the inner dungeon master.
Yeah, how we can unlock our full potential as game masters and storytellers. I think it's so cool to think of dungeon mastering not just as a hobby, but as like an art form.
It really is. And the article we're talking about today emphasizes that being a great DM is a journey of learning and growth. It's not about being perfect, but about embracing the challenge, having fun, and creating amazing moments for everyone at the table.
Exactly. And one of the best ways to grow as a DM is to experiment.
Oh yeah, try different styles, different campaign types.
Step outside that comfort zone. Have you ever wanted to run a gritty, noir-inspired urban fantasy game?
Oh, that sounds fun. Or maybe a lighthearted comedic campaign full of crazy hijinks.
A campaign inspired by your favorite anime? The possibilities are endless. But how do we even begin to explore all these different styles and settings?
Tap into your passions. What stories excite you? What worlds do you find yourself drawn to? Let those passions guide your choices as you explore different campaign settings, rule systems, and DMing techniques.
So let our own enthusiasm fuel the creative process.
Exactly.
The article also talked about tools.
Ah, yes. Tools of the trade.
Digital and physical.
Both.
What are your thoughts on incorporating those into our games?
I think they can be really helpful, but it's important to remember that they're just that, tools. They're meant to enhance the game, not overshadow it. It's about finding a balance that works for you and your group. Some DMs prefer to go all digital with virtual tabletops and character sheets, while others stick to pen and paper and hand-drawn maps.
So it's about choosing the tools that best support your DMing style and the kind of game you want to run.
Right. If a digital dice roller helps you streamline combat, then use it. But if you love the feel of rolling physical dice, then stick with those. It's all about what works for you and your players.
Makes sense. So we talked earlier about embracing player creativity and letting their choices shape the story. But sometimes those unexpected player decisions can throw even the most seasoned DM for a loop.
They can, but that's part of the fun.
How do you handle those curveballs gracefully without completely derailing the story?
Adaptability. Be ready to think on your feet. Sometimes you have to let go of your carefully crafted plans and embrace the unexpected turns that the story takes. This is where those improv skills come in handy.
So instead of seeing those unexpected player actions as like a failure, we should see them as opportunities to co-create something even more exciting.
Exactly. It's like you're all jazz musicians jamming together, you know? Building on each other's riffs and improvisations. You have a melody in mind, but you're open to letting the music flow organically and see where it takes you.
I love that analogy. It really captures that spirit of collaboration. But even the most skilled improvisers need a solid foundation to build upon, right? What does the article say about developing those core DMing skills that will help us navigate those unexpected moments?
Practice, practice. Work on those core storytelling techniques, creating compelling characters, building suspense, weaving together narrative threads, and describing scenes with vivid detail. You can hone these skills through practice, observation, and experimentation.
So how can a DM actively work on those skills outside of the game itself?
Read books, watch movies, pay attention to how stories are told. Practice writing short stories or scenes focus on developing characters and building tension. Maybe even join an improv group or take an acting class to work on those on-the-spot thinking skills.
I love those ideas. So it's an ongoing process, always working on those skills.
Exactly. It's about constantly seeking out opportunities to learn, grow, and expand our creative toolkit. And as we do that, we're nurturing that inner dungeon master, that voice that allows us to weave together engaging stories and create memorable experiences for our players.
That's a beautiful sentiment. And I think it circles back to something we talked about earlier, the importance of setting expectations for our games. Why is this so crucial for both new and experienced DMs?
Setting clear expectations right from the start can make a huge difference. It helps ensure that everyone's on the same page and that the game is enjoyable for all involved. It's about having that open and honest conversation with your players.
What are they looking for in a game?
Exactly. And what kind of experience you're hoping to create as the DM. It's a collaborative process, shaping the experience together. Some players might want a combat-heavy game, while others might be more into role-playing and character development.
Or some might want a campaign full of exploration and mystery, while others prefer political intrigue and backstabbing.
You got it. By talking about these preferences up front, you can create a game that everyone will love.
And avoid those conflicts and disappointments later on. So how do we as DMs make sure that our players feel like their choices really matter? How do we make sure they feel invested?
Create a world that reacts to their actions. Their choices should have consequences both big and small. Their actions should shape the course of events and the lives of the people they meet. If they choose to help a certain faction, it should affect their relationships with other factions in the world.
So their decisions have ripple effects that go beyond their immediate actions.
Yes. For example, if they help a village defend itself against bandits, word of their heroism might spread.
And they get new allies and opportunities.
But it could also make them enemies of the bandit leader who wants revenge.
It's not just about rewards and punishments, but creating a world where actions have consequences.
A dynamic and interconnected world where the player's choices shape the narrative.
And that feeling that their choices have weight and meaning is so important.
It is.
But what about those moments when players come up with solutions or actions that completely throw off our plans? How do we handle those situations?
Don't panic. Remember, you're not in a battle of wits with your players. You're collaborators in a shared story. And those unexpected moments can often be the most memorable parts of the game.
So embrace the surprises.
Exactly. If your players come up with some crazy plan that completely derails your dungeon crawl, don't fight it, go with it. You might end up with an even better story than you had planned.
It's all about keeping things fresh and exciting for everyone.
Exactly. And speaking of keeping things fresh, let's take a moment to acknowledge the fantastic article that inspired this conversation.
Absolutely. The article we've been discussing, Everything a New Dungeon Master Needs to Know, Running a Smooth and Fun D&D Campaign, is written by Ana Libanski and published on LitRPG Reads, a website founded by Paul Bello. If you haven't already, be sure to check them out.
They have a ton of great resources for fans of fantasy and tabletop RPGs.
So now as we head into the final part of our deep dive, I have a question for you. What qualities beyond rules and dice make a dungeon master truly exceptional?
That is a great question, and one that we'll explore in depth in the final part of our deep dive.
We've come a long way in our exploration of dungeon mastering, haven't we?
We have, from building those immersive worlds to crafting memorable NPCs to embracing that element of improv.
And now in this final part of our deep dive, I want to talk about what makes a truly exceptional dungeon master. What sets them apart?
Well, one of the things that really stands out to me is their ability to create a sense of wonder and excitement for their players. They understand that at its heart, D&D is all about escaping into this world of imagination and possibility where anything can happen.
It's not just about, sticking to the rules or following a script.
Right. It's about fostering that sense of adventure and discovery. Exceptional DMs are masters of storytelling. They weave together these narrative threads, create moments of suspense and surprise, and they really paint these vivid pictures with their words that transport their players to another realm.
They're not just game masters, they're storytellers.
They are, and they have this incredible empathy for their players. They take the time to get to know the players' characters, their motivations, their backstories, and they use that knowledge to create stories that resonate on a personal level.
So it's about weaving the players' personal narratives into the larger story of the campaign.
Exactly. They make the players feel like their characters are truly a part of that world. Exceptional DMs also know how to create challenges that test their players without overwhelming them.
Right, and they reward their players' successes in a way that feels meaningful.
It's a balancing act, pushing players outside their comfort zone, but also making sure they feel supported. And that leads us to another quality of exceptional DMs, adaptability.
Being able to improvise.
Yes. They know that no matter how much they plan, the players are going to throw them a curveball.
Huh? That's the truth.
But instead of getting frustrated, they see those unexpected moments as opportunities.
For collaboration.
Exactly. They're like jazz musicians riffing off each other, building on each other's ideas. They're quick on their feet, they can think creatively under pressure, and they trust their players.
It's a true collaboration, a partnership.
It is, and that sense of shared ownership over the story is one of the most magical things about D&D. Now, beyond those core qualities, there are a few practical things that exceptional DMs do that really elevate their games. Like, they're often masters of pacing and timing.
Knowing when to speed things up, when to slow things down.
They have a feel for the rhythm of the game. They know when to build tension and when to release it. They're also really good at using their voices and body language to bring the story to life.
Oh yeah, different accents for different NPCs, dramatic pauses, sound effects, music.
It's all part of the performance. They understand that DMing is a performance, and they use all the tools they have to make it a captivating experience for their players. And one last thing. Exceptional DMs are lifelong learners.
Always growing.
Always. They're constantly looking for new ideas and inspiration from other DMs, from books and movies, even from their own players. They're not afraid to try new things, and they're always striving to get better.
So it's a journey, not a destination.
It is, and it's a journey fueled by passion and creativity and a love for storytelling. As we wrap up this deep dive, I think it's important to remember that while all the skills and techniques we've talked about are important, the most important thing is the heart you bring to the game.
That's such a good point. The best DMs are the ones who genuinely love creating fun and memorable experiences for their players. They're the ones who see DMing as an opportunity to build friendships, to spark imaginations, to build worlds together.
And that's what it's all about. So thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the world of dungeon mastering.
We want to give a big thanks to Ana Libanski for that insightful article on LitRPG Reads, a fantastic website founded by Paul Bello.
Be sure to check them out if you're looking for more resources and inspiration. And before we go, we have one final question for you. What aspect of dungeon mastering excites you the most, and what kind of DM do you aspire to be? Share your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear from you.
Happy gaming, everyone!